I feel like it's crooked. It is crooked. This is a video that no one has asked for, but I came across this book, you see, from 1805, called The Book of the Ranks and Dignities of British Society, which will henceforth be known as the Book of Ranks, because ain't nobody got time for that. And it's all about, as the title very helpfully indicates, the ranks and dignities of British society, which includes, of course, royal ranks. And as I was reading it, just for fun in my spare time, I just knew that I had to make a relevant video about it somehow. You know, it's right down my alley. A marriage of royalty and history. Then I thought, ranks, dignities, titles, which made me think of all the calls to strip Meghan and Harry of their title. By the way, I made a very detailed video about how to go about stripping those titles back in March called The Untitled, which is quite comprehensive and definitely worth the watch, if I say so myself. And so here we are. I thought I would use the information that I gathered from not just the book, because let's face it, 1805 was quite a while ago, so I had to update, using contemporary sources to answer the question of whether stripping their titles would even affect their royal standing at all. The book also has information on the order of precedence, and I thought that's definitely relevant to the pecking order in which the royals appear at royal engagements. That strict order that Meghan Markle openly started flouting literally at her first appearance as a royal duchess. Turns out, as we already knew, that it wasn't some made-up protocol that we all just wanted to attack her on, as Harry claimed in their Netflix show. It is real and very old. So, if you're interested in learning about consequences of stripping titles, if any, in terms of the royal ranking, who outranks whom, is Meghan technically a princess, and what happens in the event of a royal divorce, then do stick around. I intend to answer all those questions for you, and hopefully with the utmost accuracy as possible. If I've made mistakes, please feel free to correct me and educate everyone in the comment section. Let's go. Throughout these past few years post-Megxit, there's always been a little bit of confusion, including on my part, surrounding the ranking of Harry's princely title that he was born with and the ducal title which he was gifted by the Queen upon his marrying Meghan Markle. Which title is the more senior one? Is it Prince Harry or the Duke of Sussex? And where would Meghan and Harry fall in the pecking order if they were ever to be stripped of these titles? We've already established in a previous video that, as per the letters patent, the titles of prince and princess, along with the HRH honorific, are essentially gifts that have been conferred by the monarch upon the birth of their children and grandchildren. These titles are also then conferred upon their spouses if and when they marry. But it turns out that this wasn't always the case. The entire concept of the monarch's children and grandchildren receiving princely titles and HRH honorifics actually only started in the 18th century. In 1714 to be exact, during the reign of King George I, when his children started being referred to in that way. Before the 18th century though, the only acknowledged prince was the Prince of Wales, the future Edward II, when his father Edward I bestowed that title upon him in 1301. So for the next 400 years or so, until the 1700s, the children and grandchildren of a monarch were simply referred to as Lord and Lady. Then Queen Victoria came along and King George V, and we got the letters patent, putting things down in writing, and the rest, as they say, is history. If you want more of a discussion on the letters patent, please check out my video from last March, The Untitled. In any case, we know that Prince Harry and Prince William were born princes and are the highest ranking princes in the realm, being princes of the blood and the sons of the monarch. So following that logic, one would assume that the title of prince, which means one who takes the first part in Latin, would outrank the title of duke. And that assumption would be correct. So why then is there a growing belief that stripping Meghan and Harry of their ducal titles would be somewhat of a demotion of sorts? How can a royal duke be demoted to a prince? Well, it's not as straightforward as one might think. Technically speaking, and we are limiting our discussions here to the United Kingdom, all right? Not princes in Europe in general, which I understand the UK, Brexit, not part of Europe, but the history is still there. We're not touching anything beyond the UK. A prince of the blood, particularly the monarch's child or grandchild, does outrank all other princes and dukes of the realm. But this is under the assumption that when we say duke, we're talking about dukes of ordinary creation or from the nobility class, rather than of royal blood, because there is a distinction between the two. Royal dukes and duchesses are members of the royal family who also happen to have a ducal title, usually conferred upon them as a gift when they become of age or when they get married. That's why Prince William was made Duke of Cambridge upon his marriage to Catherine. That's why Prince Harry was made the Duke of Sussex upon his marriage to Meghan. And that's why Prince Andrew, even in 1986, was made the Duke of York upon his marriage to Sarah Ferguson. But these dukedoms didn't upgrade their status in the order of precedence, which is different from the line of succession, mind you. The order of precedence is the hierarchy for peers in the realm and other state officials. And while it encompasses the line of succession within it, it extends far beyond it. The sequential hierarchy is also relative in nature, meaning that your seniority or your ranking depends on your closeness to the head, who is the monarch. You can see here in the Book of Ranks the list as it was in 1805, which is, by the way, how I became aware of the existence of an official order of precedence. There is a separate one for males and one for females, and unsurprisingly, actually, given that the British monarchy is quite traditional, it doesn't look much different today. So when it comes to Prince Harry, for instance, his position as the younger son of the king places him in third place in the order of precedence, right after Prince William. Note that his ducal title has nothing to do with this level of seniority in the hierarchy. All that matters is his relation to the king. And also note how his position in this list is different to his position in the line of succession, which has seen him move down the list as William and Catherine started having children, and he will continue to move down as William and Catherine's children start having children of their own. Having said that, once William is king, Harry's position in the order of precedence will drop down from third to fifth place as the sovereign's brother, rather than, of course, the sovereign's son. As for Meghan, who isn't even in the line of succession, as you know, she comes in at seventh place in the female list as the wife of the younger son of the sovereign. And as you can see, her rank entirely depends on her position as Harry's wife, not as the Duchess of Sussex, or as Ellen likes to say, a Duchess of Sussex. So you can see how important this list is when accurately talking about Meghan and Harry's standing in the pecking order. Duke or Duchess or not, they will always outrank all dukes and duchesses of ordinary making, so not of royal blood. They will outrank the wives of dukes of royal blood, but they will never, of course, outrank William and Catherine and their children. And again, this all comes down to your relation to the sovereign. I would personally love to be a countess. You know, it just sounds so much better to me than duchess. So strip my title, if I had one, I think I'd make a very happy countess. Before we move on to the topic of royal wives and ex-wives, did you know that the very first royal duke of, I suppose, the United Kingdom today, but England back in the 11th century, was William I, also known as William the Conqueror, the first Norman king of England, who was Duke of Normandy, and basically brought over that title with him when he invaded back in 1066. Even more interesting is the fact that in the Channel Islands, which are the last remaining part of the former Duchy of Normandy to remain under the rule of the British monarch, the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II, was known as the Duke of Normandy. Not the Duchess, the Duke. When we looked at the order of precedence for females just now, did you all notice that Meghan and Catherine rank lower than princesses of the blood such as Beatrice and Eugenie, who, as the sovereign's nieces, rank fourth in the order of precedence? And that will be their position for as long as the king lives, after which they will both be bumped down just a notch to the sovereign's cousins, as they will be when William is king. Now, in terms of who has to curtsy to who and who has to walk behind whom, if Catherine and Meghan are alone in the presence of Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, then the princesses of the blood would outrank them, and Catherine and Meghan would have to curtsy to them, walk behind them, all that jazz. Correct me if I'm wrong. However, that changes when both wives are in the presence of their husbands, who both outrank Beatrice and Eugenie, and therefore Catherine and Meghan would also, by virtue of that relationship, outrank them only in those instances. And so the roles are reversed. Beatrice and Eugenie have to walk behind them, curtsy to them, etc. And the Queen Consort, despite not being a constitutional monarch, and really only holds that title by virtue of being married to the king, outranks all females in the realm. In fact, I believe she also outranks everyone under the king. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, that's how I'm reading things. Now, we all know there have been a lot of rumors swirling about Meghan and Harry's possible divorce. Will they, won't they? I personally don't dabble in rumors, and I think it's just a tactic to make the headlines. But just because we don't dabble in rumors doesn't mean we can't talk about what happens to an ex-royal wife's standing and titles after divorce. Well, thanks to the divorces of both Diana and Sarah, Duchess of York, in the 90s, the Queen passed letters patent in 1996, declaring that they may retain their titles in a varied form. So for Princess Diana, it was Diana, Princess of Wales, as opposed to Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales. And for Sarah, it was Sarah, Duchess of York, as she still is today, as opposed to Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of York. And so the was dropped, replaced by their first name, and the HRH honorific was stripped as well. So that means if Meghan were to be divorced, she would be Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, as opposed to Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Which is why everyone who knows anything about titles always says she's invented this false title right now of Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. There is no such thing. You're either the Duchess of Sussex or Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. But of course, Meghan doesn't care. She makes up her own rules because she knows best.
We are back with Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex.
Now, in terms of their social standing in the hierarchy and the order of precedence, I mean, I think the language used in the list is quite clear. Only the wives of princes and dukes of the blood are included. And so logically, you would assume that ex-wives are completely bumped off the list. So, in summary, while stripping Meghan and Harry of their ducal titles will obviously be incredibly humiliating and punishing, especially for people like Meghan and Harry who have such a huge yet fragile ego, and despite the fact that it would be very much deserved, I mean, you know me, I talked about in my treason videos how those two are incredibly lucky that they were not alive in the Tudor era. I'll just leave it at that. But having said that, it still wouldn't be a demotion. It would be a removal of an added title, a gift on top of the princely title with which Harry was born. Being a prince of the blood, and in this case the sovereign's son, and even in future the sovereign's brother, is what gives Harry, and by extension Meghan, their status, their place in the order of precedence. In my last video, the Entitled, back in March, I mentioned that, in my opinion, Harry and Meghan have already made such a mockery of their titles. You know, they've diminished them entirely. So let them keep them, I say, because the last thing any of us needs right now is Meghan Markle prancing around and falsely proclaiming herself to be Princess Meghan, even though she's not. She's Princess Henry. But just like she, messed up her title as Duchess, of course she's not going to succumb or acquiesce to protocol and refer to her as Princess Henry. That's just not her style. I mean, she's already been calling herself princess to little children. No, the most fitting punishment for them, if they do anything else to attack the monarchy and its integrity, is, as I've said in my March video, to remove them and of course their children from the line of succession. I mean, as it stands, it doesn't make sense for their American kids to be in the line of succession. It doesn't make sense for them to have titles, let alone be heirs. And that's that. I hope you enjoyed this video that you most certainly didn't ask for, and I hope you learned something new, because I certainly did, and that's what life is all about for me. Learning, 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 because yes, I am that doll. Anywho, thanks for watching. Share this video with the people who you think would like it, if you please, and I'll see you next time. Take care, bye-bye.